Hey, everybody. Thanks for jumping on for another episode of The Black Pill. I am your host, Shane, joined as always by my not-so-trusty co-host, Kickin' Kenny K. How you doing, brother?
What's up, man? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for asking. It's been a wild day, but yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm having fun. We just cranked out a great episode with our new friend, Ken Ammi. That was fun.
Dude, great name, great guy. That was a really fun episode, man. I was surprised. And you know what? We had to mind our P's and Q's today. He wanted to keep it clean. And you guys think that I would mess up? Go through and listen. See who messed up. Mr. Professional Shane.
I was the only one that swore. I dropped 2 curse words, I guess. But no, it was cool. He black pilled the black pill.
Dude, it was nuts, man. He's going to make you rethink a lot of things. That's all I'm going to say.
We said it in the episode, but we'll say it here again. Micah, we love you.
Yeah, we're not shit. Yeah, we're not shitting on it at all, man. We were having fun, and I know you respect it. We respect you, man.
Yeah. So, with that, before we jump into the show, a couple things. First and foremost, head over to Rockfin, please. Check us out over there. We got all our podcasts up there, plus all our extra premium content. Ken's dropping Cocoa Bombs. We have some other interviews up there as well. So get over to Rockfin, check us out. Also get over to YouTube. All of our podcast video versions are up there. You can see my face, Ken's beautiful face, his big burly beard. He still has not shaved. You need to go get a haircut, man. You look like
I know I'm getting cut Friday.
Perfect. And lastly, this episode is brought to you by Carrot Coin. Carrot Coin is Northeast Ohio's highest paying coin jewelry shop. You can check them out online at www.carrotcoin.com. You can shop with them 24/7 at their eBay store. And be sure to check Maroon and the Gang out on social media, Instagram and TikTok. They're dropping bombs. Their content's great. Hope to see you there. With that,
hold on, wait. I got one thing I got to get in here. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in. No, guys, get on Ken Ammi's YouTube. He's got like 13,000 followers, but his views are so down. The algorithms kill him. So check out his YouTube material, Ken Ammi, Ammi. Check him out. I just got to get it out there because, like I said, the algorithm's killing the guy.
There you go, Ken. Everybody. So ancient texts and documents have been discovered and rediscovered throughout the ages. It seems as if we spend more time trying to disparage or discredit these ancient texts than we do trying to understand what they're actually telling us. Maybe it's just all one big elaborate illusion, or we could just take the simple route and believe what's written on paper or stone tablets. Either way, today's guest has set out on a giant journey to show what is Neo-Theo-Sci-Fi tall tales and how language can be used to twist the story. Today, we are joined by author, lecturer, researcher, and owner of TrueFreeThinker.com, Ken Ammi. Welcome to the show, my man. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me.
We're super grateful that you joined us. Glad to have you here. And maybe let's just start with how we got connected, because that's a good story too.
Yes, it was actually Micah Dank that made me aware of you guys, because he and I had been in sort of a group discussion online, the Union of the Unwanted, as they called us.
Yep.
And some of these astrotheological issues came up a little bit. And so he let me know in a chat, hey, I want to make you aware of my full lecture on this. And he specifically sent me the link to the show you did with him. So then afterwards, I wrote a little comment in the YouTube video, and I also sent it to you in case you wanted, just to make sure you had eyes on it, just kind of explaining a few of the things I felt were needing critique, shall we say, about it. And then you guys were generous enough to say, hey, why don't you come on? We'll discuss that, and we'll discuss other issues that I've definitely looked at quite a bit. So here am I.
Yeah. So what was the real, what was the the thing that stuck out with Micah's whole presentation. And hey, appreciate you listening to the show, though.
Of course. Well, it's not as if I can critique everything he said, because some of it is pretty new to me. And so I would have to, I'm not the kind that will just blab about stuff I don't really know a lot about.
Well, and I just want to interject real quick, because me and Shane, I don't know about Shane, but I'm not what you call really up with the Bible. I went to Catholic school for a little bit, so I know very little. That's why it's good to hear someone who's studied this and actually has a deep knowledge of it.
I mean, the things I want to mention about Micah's presentation are not even biblical. It's just basic level common sense and chronology.
Okay.
So I actually read you, because after he sent me the link, he said, I'd like your feedback. So I could read you precisely word for word what I wrote to him.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, if you're not shy about it, why not?
No, not at all. I said, frankly, I do not understand how anyone ever looked up in the night sky and saw those characters, those figures. But that may be my own failing. And it's true. I don't see a bear there. I don't see it. Maybe ancient people agreed that those things were up there. I personally don't see them, but again,
that's a fair take.
Maybe it's just me. I'm willing to say maybe it's just I'm lacking imagination or something, but whatever. That was just a general thing. So then I said, I think there may be something to some of what you said, particularly since God stated, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, Genesis 1:14. And even that might be going too far. I was just kind of trying to encourage him a bit and let him know maybe some of it is somewhere out there, but I'm not sure how that would relate to his claim that these signs were purposely put up in the skies by what he called the gods, whoever that is. Okay, so here's the rest of it then. Excuse me. As an FYI, the Tanakh, okay, that's just the Hebrew word for the whole Old Testament, does not state pride comes before a fall, but rather pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall, Proverbs 16:18. Overall, I think you could strengthen your claims by dropping any and all English-related wordplay, since that discredits itself instantly. You cannot do such semantics based on English, since the words off of which you are playing did not exist back in biblical days, and the Hebrew and Greek did not sound like English words. Thus, no S-O-N referring to S-U-N, and so no Sunday, day of worship being Sunday, being sun worship. And also no crown of thorns being the sun with sun rays. See how everything kind of starts falling apart. Now, if you want to claim that occultists later, much later, such as when English was in usage, would depict Jesus with certain symbolism, then that is another issue. But you cannot push that back into times and languages for which such things were not only had no meaning, but could not have had any such meaning. Likewise, no Saturday, Sabbath, for Jews referring to Saturn day, referring to Saturn, cube worship. And FYI, Shabbat refers to rest, which and Saturn derives from to sow. So it's an action, it's not resting. Moreover, there has never been any such thing as a Saturday referring to Sabbath, since that implies a midnight to midnight cycle. But the Sabbath is on the seventh day, which is a sundown to sundown, what we call Friday sundown to what we call Saturday sundown. So even that doesn't work. I also recommend you drop the positive affirmations of the stuff in Zeitgeist, referring to that documentary, about similarities between pagan gods and Jesus, since that stuff has been thoroughly debunked. For example, Mithras being said to have been born of a virgin when he is said to have been born from a rock. It simply does not work. Well, okay, I suppose the rock was a virgin. At least At least I would hope so. Ganesh.
Yeah, I was going to say, who's getting freaky with the rock?
But referring to that as a virgin birth is the stuff that early discredits Zeitgeist. And then there's the last piece here. And there's no reliable indication, and certainly no biblical indication, that Jesus was born on December 25th. Interestingly, someone came up with an astrotheological interpretation of the first verses of Revelation 12 and concluded that Jesus was born on September 11th, which would mean that December was not his birth month, but rather the month of his conception. And then I said shalom. So that was my full statement to him. And he replied with a thumbs up emoji.
Yep, that sounds like Micah. No, but that's a very fair point, because all these, you see people with the word play and trying to tie things in. Yeah. And that's not what the word sounded like or really meant back then. You know, and the same time, we're translating a lot of this stuff too and taking our own kind of turns on the word to what we think they really meant. So we're taking a lot of liberties with that.
And I want to dive into that. I want to kind of break that response down for a little bit, especially I want to start with where you did with the English language itself, because this often comes up too, and how just kind of what Ken said with the words, the English language itself is a whole nother conversation to be had. But you're saying, so since these things were interpreted in English right there, this is kind of null and void?
Yeah.
Wow. That's so and I just wonder, so now it makes me think, how many other ideas, theories, whatever you want to call them, can fall under that category now?
And like I said, maybe later on, once English existed, people started making up correlations and all this, but that's later stuff. Originally, no one would have even imagined that Jesus being described as having a thorn of crowns put on him. Oh, that was the sun, and the thorns are the sun rays, because S-U-N-S-O-N. Mm-hmm. Nobody would have imagined that for millennia after the fact. After millennia, it just doesn't work.
That's okay. That's a good point. That put it in better perspective for me.
Yeah, or I'll give you an example from the Union of the Unwanted show is somebody claimed that Jews and Christians worship the cube because if you take the cross and you fold it in on itself and you create a three-dimensional shape, it makes the shape of a cube. Mm-hmm. And rightly, somebody, Hotep Jesus was what he went by. He said, well, but you only got there doing origami, which was perfect. Because first of all, you have to envisage a cross that is perfectly mathematically accurate, right? If it's 1 inch off on any side, it's not going to make a cube anymore.
Right.
Then you first have to flatten it to 2 dimensions. So then you no longer have a real cross. And believe me, the Roman guy, the poor grunt who was cutting down wood and shaping it to kill guys on, he wasn't concerned about perfect dimensions and what would happen.
Okay.
I mean, all of that stuff just doesn't work. It just does not work.
Oh, man.
Yeah, chopping out, making this cross for Saturn, baby, for Saturn.
Well, okay. So speaking of Saturn, can you explain because I don't quite follow. Can you explain the Friday to Saturday, that whole piece of it?
Right. So Micah was referring to the Sabbath as the Saturday, and ergo the Saturn day, ergo Saturn worship. Right. But the Sabbath has never, ever been on the Saturday because Saturday is based on a solar calendar that we use. So we go midnight to midnight, right?
Right.
So Saturday is midnight. You go through the evening, the morning, afternoon, evening, night, and then that midnight ends the Saturday. But that was not the Sabbath. Sabbath was on the 7th day, which is based on a lunar calendar. And that's because in Genesis, it states the evening and the morning, first day, evening and the morning, second day. So you start at the evening, you go through the morning. Once you get to the next evening, that ends the day. So it's a lunar calendar. So it begins on what we call Friday sundown, and then it ends what we call Saturday sundown. So Friday day isn't the Sabbath, but Friday evening is, And Saturday day is, but Saturday evening is not. So see that doesn't work. You can't call it Saturday and Saturn day because it's a Shabbat, it's the Sabbath, and it's the seventh day. It's not Saturn day. It's not during that time.
Even with that, you got to do a lot of not mental gymnastics, but you're like, yeah, Saturn, Saturn, and then Saturn worship. Like,
it just makes me wonder now, what does this mean for like how we live our lives today? Like everything. And I guess the question that I want to get to is like, so what does this mean for astrotheology and maybe even astrology in general?
See, one thing I was trying to distinguish with Micah is, look, he had some charts and graphs showing the constellations and all that stuff. I'm not into that. I would have to spend a considerable amount of time looking into that to honestly and intelligently have any kind of reaction to it. That's why I decided to try to help him out by saying, look, at least drop this stuff from your presentation, because this stuff will just discredit you so instantly. Mm-hmm. People might say, well, then the rest of what he says must be bunk as well, because this stuff certainly is.
Sure.
I don't really know what it says for anything else.
Okay.
I'm just saying, when you have this in your presentation and anybody could debunk it just thinking chronologically or linguistically, you don't have to know anything about cosmology or astrology or anything just to look at this stuff. So then he would be well off dropping this stuff. And then what we would be left over would be more like in his wheelhouse. And then somebody could look at that and see whether it's accurate or not.
Yeah. And I want to make a point real quick. This isn't a Micah bashing episode or nothing like that. We're just kind of going over some very interesting things that you caught that, I mean, like you said, this is basic stuff, dude. This isn't like a biblical scholar to figure out.
That's important to note. We're friends with Micah. Yeah. We like Micah. And the other thing to say is we wanted to do this too, because Ken, your approach, I think, is very professional and it's worth hearing out. And I know you and Micah have talked about it as well. So I don't, this isn't like we always say we don't run a gotcha show. We're not trying to get anybody. So I think this is important stuff.
Yeah. And that's why I told the backstory, because this isn't something that I'm just kind of, like you said, I even told you before we started recording, that's not my purpose. And that this is what I wrote to him. And I even told you his reaction. What he might do with this, who knows? But it was just a critique. And personally, I'm very open to critique and I thrive on it. So I would only hope other people would likewise, because if I'm saying something inaccurate, I want to know about it.
Yeah. And this is where the kind of space that we're all in now gets a little tricky, right? Because a lot of things come out and we do a lot of research and I don't know. Nobody knows everything for sure, right? There's a lot of I don't know what I don't know type thing going on. So it is critical. It's crucial to have these kind of conversations about everything that, we talk about in our space so we can come to better ideas, better outcomes, whatever it may be. So I'm all here for this. And I think this is great. I'm glad we're doing this. I can't wait to talk to Micah too.
This is the same kind of just analytical approach I bring to anything I do, because frankly, I have a hard time understanding things until I boil them down to very, very basic terms. Mm-hmm. And then I can build them back up to their complexity. And finally, okay, now I get it. And so part of my concern is when we talked about maybe discussing Nephilim and giant related issues is I don't know people's hearts or thoughts or motivations. I don't know that. I can only judge what they say. But I do wonder what happens once you're making a living off of a certain topic and whether that plays into why you're absolutely unwilling to be corrected. Because who wants to say, hey, audience, all those books and DVDs and lectures you've been hearing from me and buying from me. Oopsie. I mean, I would hope we'd have enough integrity to do that. But I do wonder, because I can verify that at least 3 of the top pop researchers who are teaching Neo-Theo-Sci-Fi do not want to discuss it, period. And I'm not aware that any of them have actually ever debated those issues, ever, any of them, as far as I know. Mm-hmm. And that tells me something right there. I'm not sure why that would be.
It's almost like they're pushing a fairy tale, just telling stories just to tell stories.
It does seem that way, because when you dig into the claims, it's a very problematic field of research.
It's funny how these episodes for us kind of start to line up the way they do, because just the other day I was talking about like corporate conspiracies. I use quotes on that because it seems like, I mean, one, you look up and you see a lot more truth or drama going on right now. You also see kind of what you alluded to. And first off, right, like if somebody spends X amount of time, I don't know, years, months, whatever it may be, researching a topic and comes to a conclusion. And look, I'm the same way. I'm stubborn, egoic, all those things. It's hard to kind of get away from those beliefs because you're like, I put this much work into it. I did the research, so I get that. Then you kind of stack the next layer of, if you're selling some type of product or service off of it. Now, just like you said, it's hard to walk back from that because that's your income. That's your livelihood. That's how you're, putting food on the table, paying your rent or your mortgage, whatever it is. So I get all that. And I think it is a good exercise for us as a community to do what you just said, Ken. And that's kind of, maybe we do need to peel everything back down to kind of a base layer as close as we can get to it, and kind of re-understand or relearn or build back up whatever it is we've been thinking over the years, because it has kind of turned into this shit show.
Well, I tell you, I published an article once saying, hey, I was wrong and I'm admitting it. And it was really something that some people would just consider purely technical and irrelevant. But to me, it was like, I made a claim, someone pointed out that it was inaccurate. I double checked my research and found out, wow, I missed, I blew it. So I think when that happens, we need to be careful to not bash people and say, well, there you go. You're admitting you blew it. You're just discredited. But no, say, okay, let's encourage that. So we can say, okay, look, this person's human, not omniscient, not infallible. And now they're correcting their error. Let's support that. I'm not sure why that's so difficult, except that something about getting online turns us into headbutters. Everyone wants to just go at it. It's crazy.
Ego. People like pointing them out, but I say it shows integrity. I'd say that shows like even more credit to, I just point people to your research after you went out and said, okay, right, I'm wrong here. It shows that you're looking for the answers, not looking to be right.
It's interesting though, because we talk a lot about, love and getting to that higher frequency and kind of operating in that space. And I think, to both of your points, just a very important place for us in this whole world to get to is a space of understanding where it's like, look, yeah, we can point out an issue that's wrong with the research you've done, but you've gone this far to get all of us here collectively. Now let's just build upon that, right? And go forward. Okay, we've learned something throughout this journey, throughout this process. And it doesn't need to be a mean-spirited or any type of thing. And it kind of sounds like pie in the sky type scenario when you're like, oh, let's all, but like, that's what this is going to take, right? Where we all get to that certain level of understanding and love, where it's like, yeah, no one's mad at you because we've debunked this, or this is just not flat out not right, whatever it is. Let's just move forward from it because we learned something along the way.
In fact, something very deep that a friend of mine told me is love without truth is deception.
Ooh,
yeah,
that's deep. I like that. I'll write down that time. But so I kind of want to shift over to, you brought it up before, the Nephilim. This gets everyone kind of all excited. I know it gets me excited, but I don't even know, where do you really want to start getting into it?
Well, let's start here. So I'm working on my 7th book on Nephilim and giants.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, biblically, what we're told about them is in 2 verses, not even 2 texts, 2 verses, 2 sentences. And that has led to millennia worth of commentary and discussion and debate. It blows my mind, just that alone.
That
2 statements.
Is that in the book of Genesis?
Genesis 6:4. And then Numbers 13:33.
Yeah, I wrote that one down too, because those numbers, like as a conspiracy guy, I see 13 and 33 together. My ears perk up right away.
Okay, but even that didn't exist till the 1511, those verse numbers. So
okay.
Again,
that makes sense.
That's fine though. See, my point isn't throw something like that out, but just put it in the right chronological order and say, what was going on then that somebody decided to put chapter and verse numbers? which frankly, I think was a disastrous idea, disastrous, because what I understand how citing things makes it easy. I can say Numbers 13:33. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I can look it up in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess nowadays I can't go like this, like I'm leafing pages. I got to go like this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, on your screen, on your phone or iPad, whatever. Yeah.
But what happened is it breaks up complete thoughts into thought fragments. And I can't even tell you how many false doctrines are born of little fragments from here and little fragments from there. Not that that's necessarily wrong, but that if they're uncontextual, then you can kind of just make it say whatever you want. Well, anyhow, I was just pointing out that 2 little verses have led to all this discussion, including me. Here I am on my
7
book.
books later.
I never thought. I wrote 1 and I thought I'm done because come on, how much more is there? And here I am. It's just unbelievable. So one of the fascinating things is in Genesis 6:4, or let's say verse 1, 2, and 4. 3 isn't directly contextually relevant. You're confronted with the term sons of God and the terms daughters of men and the term Nephilim, and that they became mighty men, men of renown. And so that alone opens up a window to very detailed and complex issues. Who are they? Who were the sons of God? Who are the daughters of men? Who are the Nephilim? How and why did they become well-known and mighty? And that's what makes it so fascinating, is it's so succinct that we have people who would look at stuff like that and wonder about it and start researching, and also write folklore and historical fiction and all kinds of stuff based on it. People love to find the gaps, as it were, and try to fill them in. Again, whether they're trying to fill them in because they consider themselves to be prophets who are divinely inspired, or because they're just writing fiction and or folklore and whatever it might be, that's one of the things that fascinates people, and it always has.
And then I wanted to get in with the Genesis 6, because I know you've talked about this before, the Genesis 6 affair. I've only kind of like looked at it briefly, but I know you've done some real research on this. I mean, and again, you did just kind of bring up Genesis 6, describing Nephilim and, you know, sons of God, daughters of man. So can you get into what that whole affair was really about?
Yeah, well, one of the issues is it says sons of God, and it doesn't tell you who they were. So when we look at the whole Bible for the term sons of God, look, in any language, a word, a term, a phrase will have more than one meaning. That's just common. So what is the contextual understanding? Because once you get, let's say in the New Testament, sons of God are people who have been born again. Okay, so that's one usage. Adam is called the son of God. That's okay, that's another. Jesus is called God's son, unique son, right? So in this case, I think the quickest shortcut is Job 38:7, that notes that the sons of God, at the very least, witnessed the creation of the earth. So that alone tells you they're not human. It doesn't specify what they were, but at least you get the concept that they're not human. So then
Interesting.
The original, the traditional, and the majority view held by both Jews and Christians is what's called the angel view, which sees sons of God as being angels. And that's from BC days through centuries into AD days. That's what my book, Genesis 6 Affair, Sons of God, Angels or Not, that's what it's about. It begins with a chart, and I tell you exactly who from the BC days up until the 500s or so AD took which view. And now that doesn't necessarily mean that's the accurate view, but at least we know it's demonstrable that it's the original majority and traditional view. So that's why you would look to something like Job 38:7, and other people would appeal to Job chapters 1 and 2 and say, okay, it doesn't say angel, even though the Septuagint Greek translation does have angelos there. But okay, you can understand why that is. And then much later, what became popularized is what's called the Sethite view, which has the sons of God being descendants of Seth and the daughters of men being descendants of Cain. But one thing is that people who made it popular, very, very popular, was Augustine of Hippo. And I always like to tell that I was kind of like armchair psychologizing Augustine.
Uh-oh. You there, Ken? Ken?
Shit.
Well, the thing is, Manny.
Hey,
He's back.
Ken, you glitched out for a while. You were you just started talking about Augustina Hippo, and then you got cut off.
Okay. Am I back?
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah, I did get a little notification from my computer saying, hey, something happened, and okay.
But we're back, baby. We're good to go.
Okay, so the point was that Augustine of Hippo was a Manichaean before he became a Christian. So that was a form of Gnosticism. He wanted to do away with any Manichaean belief once he converted. And Mani, after whom Manichaeans are named, did hold to the angel view. So it seems to me, if I had to kind of play psychologist, that's why Augustine took the Sethite view, and he was so incredibly influential that he popularized that, even though his views on it are very nuanced. I mean, I get into that in the books. But anyhow, one of the things I would wonder is, why was it strictly male Sethites and then strictly female Cainites? No mixture at all, like strictly down the line?
Right.
And then why is it that if the Sethites, I don't know, to me, it's really kind of a myth that the Sethites were this like pure and holy bloodline, and the Cainites were this wicked, evil bloodline. I don't think that's really in the text. You can kind of see how people think that, but I think it's way too generalized. So anyhow, my point for pointing that out is the angel view explained to you why there's only males on one side and females on the other one, because every time the Bible describes an angel, it describes them looking exactly like a human male, period, just straight up. No wings, no halo, nothing different, except that they have capabilities we don't seem to have, which is to traverse whatever we want to call them, dimensions, realms, or something like that, right? So they can appear or disappear or be visible and invisible. They can do things like that, but they're also seen walking, eating, doing very physical things. So the biblical view, I would say, is that they are as physical as Jesus is post-resurrection, because you see him doing the same thing. He can be touched, he can eat, but he can walk through a closed door. He can be visible or invisible. So it seems to me angels were created with a flesh, with a body of their own kind. Mm-hmm. And in the Psalms, it tells us that we humans were created a little lower than the angels. Well, and so that tells you, why is it male sons of God? Because all angels are males. So what did they do? Well, they had to marry females. That's why it's only daughters of men on the other side.
So hear that, females? Even the angels want you. They want Earth women because you are that gorgeous. Yeah. I know I love Earth women, but
they were looking down like, baby got back.
Yeah, right. That milkshake does bring all the boys to the yard.
Earth girls are easy, you know.
Obviously, all they do is come down. I'm an angel. Okay.
And so just to tie up why I would take the angel view, also, you look at Jude and 2 Peter, they both talk about the angels who sinned. And there's only a one-time sin or fall of angels in the Bible. And if Genesis 6 isn't it, then nobody would know what they were talking about. And they talk about how the angels who sin are incarcerated. Okay, so this brings me to my own personal theory about the identification of demons. Because folklore from millennia after the Torah was written, in the pseudepigraphical time range, so a few hundred years before the time of Jesus, folklore is what I'm calling it, written in the book of Jubilees, in the book of Ethiopic Enoch, says that demons are the spirits of dead Nephilim. And I think that was a pretty good try. But I found a more biblical view, which you can read. I wrote an article called Demons Ex Machina, What Are Demons? So kind of a succinct argument is that it seems to me what happened is when the angels were bodily, physically incarcerated, their spirits are left to roam the earth, and that's what we call demons.
Oh.
Okay, and now what really solidified that for me is that sometimes when Jesus is interacting with these wicked spirits, with these demons, they're absolutely terrified of being sent into the abyss, the bottomless pit. And it's like, well, why? Well, because if they did, then they would re-inhabit their angel bodies, and then they'd be stuck there doing hard time, for centuries or millennia or however long it is. So they're absolutely terrified of that. They'd rather stay up here on earth doing that which they do. And it also would explain why they seek to possess people. It also would explain why they like to see themselves worshipped in the form of idols, because they used to be embodied, and they really seek that. They want to get back to that state, but not if they're going to be stuck. They want to be free.
Dude, they're like convicts that broke out of prison. They're just going around taking, doing whatever they need to stay out of hell.
Holy
well, okay, let's be...
Or the abyss, excuse me.
Right, which Peter specifically refers to Tartarus. Tartarus, right? And a lot of people confuse this, so just in case, Tartarus is not that sauce you eat with fish.
It's not on your teeth.
Yeah. Tartarus sauce, now even spicier. And that's the only time the word Tartarus appears in the entire Bible. So I think he was homiletically appealing to his Greek audience, because they instantly would have realized, oh, okay, Tartarus in Greek mythology, it's like the lowest possible place of the bottomless pit. And
this is why I get so scared when we talk about this old world Tartary.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I've run across the Tartary.
Ooh, that's a rabbit hole you can get into.
Yeah, it's a whole rabbit hole,
Okay,
but it's a whole rabbit hole. But that's why when I learned this whole thing about Tartarus being the lowest level, and then I've always been into this Tartary, call it a conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it. It's basically like the old world. It really scared me when I made that connection, because I was like, oh shit, that's an interesting connection right there.
And think about how conceptually difficult it is to even discuss this stuff, that we're talking about the lowest level of the bottomless pit.
Right.
And what's so interesting about that, like when you just said the lowest level of the bottomless pit, this Tartary, this world, the old world that we always talk about, is supposed to be like this highest level of technologically advanced civilization that we all lived within, and it's high vibration with free energy and med beds and all these wonderful things that these humans in this old world had. And it's just like, it's another, like, it's the upside down world all over again.
And so the point being that when Peter wrote that, his audience would have instantly recognized, oh, okay, yeah, we know that from Greek mythology. That's the place where the real bad dudes are, whether you call them gods or titans or angels, whatever you call them, that's where they are, because they're the bad dudes, right? And then in my understanding, Revelation 9, it talks about the bottomless pit being opened up. And you get this cloud of smoke and these beings that come out of it that are described in incredibly symbolic terminology. And to me, that's when the bottomless pit is opened, and the angels, the demons re-enter their angelic bodies, and then they're allowed back on the earth to wreak havoc physically. And then eventually, Revelation 12, they join up with Satan and fight a war in heaven against Michael and the loyal angels, and they lose. And so anyhow, that's the angel and demon portion of Genesis 6. And you see how long I've had to talk just to begin to discuss the issue of Nephilim. We're not even there yet.
Yeah, right. And it's what, 2 verses? It's
yeah, I mean, so
2 sentences. Like, geez, you're going on for what, a half an hour?
Yeah. So okay, I know it's a lot to process. So let's shift gears now into so let's go with that it's angels and humans that are mating, and they have these offspring, right? And so by definition, these would be hybrids, half angel, half human. And well, one thing to notice about Genesis 6 is there's no physical description of them whatsoever. We're told they became mighty and they're men of old, men of renown, but we're not told how or why. We don't know what they did that made them so well known and mighty, but okay, that's that's the deal. Now, here I feel let me just say, there's a lot of confusion about whether they survived the flood or returned after the flood. Biblically, there's absolutely no way they survived or that they returned. It just doesn't exist. And you'll notice people have to do a lot of gymnastics to the point of contradicting the Bible in order to argue that they survived or that they returned. It is not there. Okay, so.
Well, at the same time, there's only 2 places they actually reference them. So the chance of it being in the New Testament is probably pretty low.
Except that Numbers 13:33 is recording a post-flood event.
Oh, okay.
So then, okay, how is that then?
Right.
Well, I can give it to you in very succinct terms. I mean, I could read the whole text and go over it in detail, but just to simplify it, what happened at that point is that the Israelites arrive at Canaan. They arrive at the land they're supposed to inhabit, and they send spies into the land to check it out first. So the spies come back. There's 12 of them. And they first they say, hey, look at the fruit we found in the land. Great fruit. It's a land that flows with milk and honey. Great land. And then they say, but the people that live there, they're strong, and they have big fortified cities. Okay, so that's intimidating to Israelites who at the time were itinerant wilderness tent dwellers. Right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so that was kind of scary. And then they specify every single people group that they saw, and they specified where each people group lives. Okay, there's that. I call that the original report. It's accepted as is. And then Caleb, one of the spies, says, basically, get her done. Let's go and conquer it. We can do this. It's that simple. But then what happens is Caleb and Joshua end up on one side and the 10 other spies on the other. And the others are saying, no, we're not going to be able to conquer it because the people are stronger than we. So right there on a theological level, you can right away tell they're being unfaithful and disloyal because God had commanded them to do it. And they're saying, no, we're not going to be able to. That's a problem right there. Then what happens is the narration tells us, and then they brought up an evil report of the land. So now you know this is something of a very different sort. And they claim something bad of the land. Oh, it devours its inhabitants. So wait a minute. Hold on. Now you just contradicted the original report that was good of the land. Now
milk and honey. Yeah.
So now you're showing yourself to be contradictory. And then they say, all the people we saw are of great stature. Okay, well, hold on a second. Twice it was said that the people in the land were strong. Okay. But now you're throwing in an embellishing claim that they're also of great stature. And now let me pause here a second, because whether you're using the word giant or tall or of great stature, it's all subjective, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's vague and it's generic, right? For instance, I've been called a giant many times in my life.
I was going to say, you look pretty tall, dude.
Many. Well, I'm 6 even.
Oh, okay.
Okay, for North America, that's not really impressive, but I've been called the giant many times. So the thing is, Israelites of those days, the males average 5 foot, maybe 5'3".
Oh, yeah.
So to them, I mean, 6'5" person would be, gigantic. They would be of great stature, much less 7 feet. So that's something to keep in mind, because people generally jump into discussions about giants and they don't bother defining what they mean. Everyone just imagines whatever they want. It's like that's no way to have a discussion.
I know, right? I'm guilty of that.
So at this point, they make the key claim in verse 33, and there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, the Anakim, come from the Nephilim, and we were before them as grasshoppers, right? So
I can see what they're getting at there. Grasshoppers were just little people by their feet, so to speak,
right,
you know?
Right. So the issue is, okay, they're already unfaithful and disloyal. They're already contradictory. They already embellished. And now they made 4 claims altogether about which the whole entire Bible knows nothing. That all the people in the land were of great stature, nowhere else found. that Nephilim lived post-flood, nowhere else found, that Anakim are related to them, nowhere else found, and the only physical description we have of Nephilim, even if it's generic, that they're very, very, very tall, nowhere else found in the whole entire Bible. So what happens with the Neo-Theo-Sci-Fi crowd is they pick up this one verse, they run with it, forget interacting with the narrative, forget the context, just pick up that one verse, run with it, accept it, and literally build an entire all-encompassing theory on that. So now you have post-flood Nephilim and Anakim tribes related to them. You have them being giant and all based on one verse. And they then go back to Genesis 6:4 and they misinterpret it based on this, and I'll show you how. I know you wrap your mind around that for a sec, and then I'll show you how.
I know, man. I know.
Well, I'm just hearing a lot of this. It's all interpretation of whoever's looking at it, or even who wrote it, what the real intention was. And we really don't know because they wrote it how long ago. And again, the translations too, with all the languages, it makes everything.
Okay, so look, that we could say that's one issue, but the other issue is, what does it say? Set aside for a moment who wrote it, why, how. That is a separate issue. If we're dealing with what we have, because when I refer to the pop researchers, I'm referring mostly to committed Bible believers. And so that's a separate issue. I'm dealing with the same text they are. And I'm saying, look at what's actually there and what isn't, and what you're claiming, it just isn't there. Okay. So we saw right here that you're either going to believe these absolutely irreliable guys, or you're going to believe who? For instance, they contradict Caleb, they contradict Joshua, they contradict Moses, and they contradict God, and they contradict the rest of the Bible. Because, for instance, none of them say a single word about Nephilim post-flood ever, not once, not one single time. So are you going to believe some of the least reliable guys in the whole entire Bible and throw out the rest that you're then going to misinterpret based on them? Or are you going to say, no, I'm not going to believe these guys?
Now I'm with you, because before, as you were explaining this, I was thinking about like interpretation of the Bible, and this has nothing to do with it. You're simply pointing at, no, this is what's there. Like, this is what you talked about early in the show. And we talked about, like, let's peel back and get down to, what we know is there. And then we can start a conversation from that point, because everything else around it, like you said, those 4 points you just gave and how these stories have been built off of those things, it's just like, it's not there.
See, it's kind of, that's why it was perfect that we tied this to the astrotheology, because in a way it's the same in that let's clean out the clutter and the stuff that totally doesn't belong there. Let's see what we have left. So now I said that they misinterpret Genesis 6 based on what they read later, and this is how. So it says the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bore children to them. So then they'll tell you, well, there you go. They were in the earth in those days, the Noah's days, and afterward, so post-flood. But hold on a minute. The flood isn't even mentioned for the very first time until Genesis 6:17. So that's a full 13 verses later.
Mm-hmm.
And the verse just told you what it's talking about. Those days and after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. And when was that? Well, verse 1 told you, when man began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were attractive, yada, yada, yada. So those days was when that first happened. And when was that? I have no idea. Maybe as early as when Adam and Eve's kids started having kids. But regardless, it's telling you they were there when it first happened and then after it first happened. So it kept happening, but the flood brought an absolute end to it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And so biblically, 8 people survived the flood and some animals. So Nephilim didn't. And so the people who want to claim that they somehow returned, they literally have to invent stories about how that was possible. And well, they have to invent them because they're not there. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't.
Oh
and
my God. This is more like everything's fake, man.
Well, I don't know if this is the wrong time to take the turn, but because skeletons are found that are, you see these large ones. There is evidence of this. So when we're talking,
yeah,
like,
they
what
find
is
dinosaur bones too, Ken.
I'm just saying Smithsonian hides them. It's just kind of a weird
Do
thing.
they?
So there's pictures of, I just wanted to know. There goes my question out the window. Never mind, Ken. I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. But no, I wanted to see, we're talking about what is a giant, and there is some evidence. There, air quotes for you there, Shane. But is that real evidence, or again, are they playing a game?
Okay, so tying together what we reviewed thus far, the only biblical physical description of Nephilim is in the mouths of absolutely irreliable people. Okay. And so we don't have a reliable physical description of them. So we can't claim that they were even 1 inch taller than average, really. We can't.
Giant, they can mean just they're powerful with their mind or something like that, or how they, just the presence can even mean powerful.
In fact, I think it'd be delicious if it turns out that they were little people, but that'd be awesome.
I mean, everything's in reverse, so probably
that's the upside down world we're in. Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, now let's jump into linguistics for a minute, because people will generally just, whatever. We're either going to accept numbers 1333 as absolute fact, or we're going to argue that, hey, but Nephilim are called giants. Okay, let's go with that for a second. Now, the Hebrew term Nephilim comes from the Hebrew root naphal, and it means to fall or fallen, or to cause to fall or something. But then this becomes one of those scholarly debates, because there are qualified scholars such as Dr. Michael Heiser, from whom we've all benefited in this field of research, who will tell you, well, it actually comes from the Aramaic naphilah, and naphilah does mean giant, which in my mind only begs the question, well, then what does giant mean? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's pause there for just a second, because then this becomes a battle of the scholars, and I kind of just sit back and let them fight it out, because for the J. Edward Wright Endowed Professor of Judaic Studies, who is Dr. Wright himself, he said the term traditionally translated as giants in both the Greek Septuagint gigantes, and now the English is nephilah, nephilim, a term based on the root nephal, meaning fall. It has nothing to do with size. And then he specified the root nephil in Aramaic also means fall and not giants. So, okay, let them fight it out, okay? Because the problem is, what is a giant? I can think of like 6 different meanings. What is a giant to a pygmy, males of whom average 4'11"? What is a giant to a pro basketball players, none of whom quite make it to 8 feet, but they're right up there, right? Yeah. It's vague, it's generic, it's subjective, it's undefined. It's better to just absolutely ignore that word, honestly. It causes so many problems. So what happened is, when the Greek Septuagint, it's also known as the LXX, was a Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament done roughly 300 BC. What they did is they rendered, okay, not even translated, rendered Nephilim as gigantes. But they also rendered Giborim as gigantes, and they also rendered Rephaim as gigantes. So again, you don't have to know anything about linguistics to know that's a terrible idea, right? Because Nephil, Gibor, Repha, very different words. Why would you translate all 3 of them with one word? And that has caused so many problems.
To sell books. Yeah, this is so good.
So now the thing is, gigantes, it literally means earthborn. Yeah, so not even that, it doesn't imply anything about height, right?
Because English people, we see it, we're like, oh, gigantes, gigantic. That's of course what it means.
Right. And the thing is, yeah, you could say that in the modern era,
right,
giant and gigantic has come to mean some vague statement about being taller than usual or the average, but that's not what it originally meant. So that's the linguistic problem. And so English versions that refer to Nephilim as giants, they're just following the Septuagint. And fortunately, they dropped the Giborim rendering. They don't follow that because Gibor just means mighty or might. So they'll actually translate that, but they still render Nephilim and Rephaim as giants. So the problem becomes when I say there's only 2 verses that speak of Nephilim, people inevitably come back to me, well, but the Old Testament is filled with references to giants. Well, yes, but those are words that are rendering Repha or Rephaim, and that's a whole different ballgame. Rephaim are just post-flood humans, right. Some of whom, like the Anakim are a Rephaim subgroup, who are referred to as tall or of great stature. But again, what does that mean?
Yeah, right.
And so these are the sort of, if you just kind of run through the narrative that's built based on believing numbers 1333, it's very easy to get taken in because especially if someone's just shooting out this information and using vague terms that they're not even defining, it makes it easier to water everything down and kind of make it seem like, oh yeah, everything ties together. But when you stop and you're like, well, hold on a second. If this data point and this one have a problem, then you don't really have a neat line anymore.
Right.
It's just not working. So, okay, all that to say, your point, Ken's point about the giant skeletons and all that. So forget claiming that they're Nephilim. We can't claim that. People might like to think that, but we can't
How
actually.
simple.
Right, yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm not, okay, I always feel I have to say this at some point when I'm discussing their stuff. If there were people all over the planet or somewhere that were much taller than average, what do I care, right? Good for them. I hope they enjoyed it. I mean, I don't care. It's not an issue for me.
I hope they don't,
just,
you know.
my issue is just being accurate. So for one, again, we can't claim to know that they were Nephilim because we have no reliable physical description of them. And the physical descriptions that we do have come from millennia after the Torah was written. Again, in the pseudepigraphical era where like Enoch, for instance, Ethiopic Enoch has them being miles tall, okay, miles. Okay, yeah. I mean, that makes for a good folkloric story.
Jack and the Beanstalk, like type stuff.
Right, but I mean, we know it's impossible, the inverse square law and all these things that would mean if they even took a step, they would shatter their own bones. I mean, it's just impossible. Or the Babylonian Talmud, 300 to 400 AD, it says they were so large they wore the necklace. They wore a sun. They wore the sun as a necklace. That's how. Come on, okay. This is the kind of stuff you get. So another issue is when I personally have followed up on some of these claims of having found giant bones, and they usually, when they're examined, they turn out to be whales or pachyderm or dinosaurs.
There it is.
Usually, because if you think about it, ancient people weren't expert anatomists. So they would find a giant bone and say, well, it's a giant human, right? Or I'll give you a very good example that somebody has provided is, let's say you find a mammoth skeleton. You don't know what it is. You're going to lay it out on a 2-dimensional flat ground. And how are you going to reconstruct it? You don't know the intricacies of the anatomy. Well, you lay it out in a human form, and then you take its trunk hole as a hole of an eye, and there you have a giant cyclops. You know, to me, that's very commonsensical that's how that would come about.
And they were probably playing like connects. They're like, yeah, we'll piece this one together. This one kind of fits, and we have a giant human.
Yeah, or I'll give you a recent example. Just recently in the news, giant bones were found in China. Okay, and the tallest of which was like 6'3" or 6'7" off the top of my head. Well, okay, to us, that's not very impressive. Maybe it was to the ancient Chinese, just like it would have been to the ancient Israelites who were 5'3".
Right.
But, you know, I hear in Nephilim circles, people's appealing to that story. You see, they found giant skeletons. Dude, they're not even 7 feet.
Right. Like when I think of Nephilim, I think of what, 8-9 feet tall, like sometimes up to 12 feet tall. Like at least that's the stories you kind of
claim.
Yeah.
And so let's dig into that a little bit more, because I can kind of hear people shooting thoughts at me a week from now when you post this saying, oh yeah, what about Goliath, and what about King Og of Bashan, and what about, well, biblically, again, I'm going to restrict myself a little more biblically here. We're only told 2 specific heights. One of them is an Egyptian man who is 7'5", and the other is Goliath. Now, the issue with Goliath is that there's different manuscripts, right? So the earliest manuscripts we have, which would be the Septuagint, and also the Dead Sea Scrolls, and also the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, have him as being just shy of 7 feet. Okay. Much later manuscript, the Masoretic, has him as just shy of 10 feet. So if you want to go with the preponderance of the earliest attestations, you're going to have to go with that he was just shy of 7 feet. Okay. And now again, to ancient Israelites, that would have been a very tall guy. But then in the story, it's not like his height is relevant. He's notable because he was a successful warrior. That's what's notable about him. And so when English readers are seeing that he's called a giant, that's the word Repha. It's just identifying his nationality, his people group, not anything about his physique. Then King Og of Bashan. Oh, well, you know, he was like 12, 13 feet. Well, how do you know that? We're never told his height, period. We're not told his height, but we're told the size of his bed. Okay. I mean, look, fair enough. If you measure my bed, you subtract about a foot from it. Yeah, you'd get a good idea of how tall I am. Although you'd also think I'm like 5 times wider than I actually am.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay. And also, I'm not an ancient sovereign. I'm not a monarch. I don't have who knows what luxuries like a gigantic bed just because I feel like it, or because I'm sharing it with my harem or whatever this might have been. But what ends up happening is we discover that archaeologists have found quote unquote beds of those same dimensions as Og's. And they're not meant to be slept on. They're ritual objects on which the supposed male and female gods mate. So it's not like he was sleeping on it. It was a ritual object.
Well, at the same time, too, how many people own California Kings or Alaskan Kings where they're like, there's no way someone's even close to that. You know, you could fit a family of 10 in that bed. So to say like that's the actual, you know, you really
this
get a
has
judgment
me just
off it.
questioning all the weird connections we make for this has my mind spinning right now.
And honestly, this is part of what I love about your show is you guys are like, oh, wow. And you could see on the spot, you're having your mind blown and think, well, I need to rethink some things. And that goes back to what we were talking about. Yes, let's rethink these things and let's discuss them openly, because just because something's exciting sci-fi, and boy, that, like what I told you about the Bible and Nephilim, it's not exciting. I could literally tell it to you in one paragraph, and that's just not enough to build a whole quote unquote ministry off of. It's not. So the more exciting I can make it, the more sci-fi and the more throwing in all kinds of stuff. I'll give you an example. One of the latest things is people are throwing in the whole Bigfoot phenomena into the Nephilim. And like the last time I listened to a guy named Gary Wayne, he claimed that there was such a thing as Nephilim dogs. I'm
just making that thing
you know, at some point you have to get a hold of your integrity and be like, I just can't do this anymore. You know, I would hope so. Because it's really getting ridiculous out there, honestly.
And Ken, I'm not going to lie to you. You know, when we saw you reached out to us, I'm like, all right, this will be fun because The only thing about the Bible I really looked up was like verses and passages when I was super atheist, and like just to kind of shoot down the Catholics or Christians and all that. Like, oh, you believe this stupid thing or this stupid thing. So then when you're coming in here and like giving it real contextual evidence and stuff, it kind of, I'm not to say that I foo-fooed it before, but it kind of gives it a little bit more, little hold to it.
Yeah. And then this is part of the problem is I hear some of those top pop researchers complaining. Ellie Marzulli is famous for this. Why aren't they teaching this stuff in the church? Why aren't they letting us come in and speak to their church? It's like, well, because most of what you're saying is biblically inaccurate.
Right.
So, I mean, and you don't want to discuss it, by the way. So what do you expect pastors to do, but just to completely reject you? I mean,
that's such a simple argument.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, it saddens me terribly to have to say, if you were just randomly go online and start researching this stuff, you're going to primarily run into the top pop researchers. And they're the ones spinning the Neo-Theo-Sci-Fi, and it saddens me terribly. And it's almost as if, I don't want to go full-blown conspiracy, but it's almost like you got to know a certain handshake, because there's guys who didn't exist online, period. They publish one book on Nephilim that goes with the pop flow, and instantly they're being interviewed, they're being invited to conferences, they're doing everything. And I'm like, hi, how about me? I wouldn't mind making my living off of this stuff. It'd be nice because I enjoy it so much and I find it fascinating and I've done so much of it. But I can't even get those guys to have a discussion with me in private, much less anywhere else.
This became, at least to me, that whole thing became very apparent especially the last year. And I think YouTube was a good one that kind of proved that out, where you would see people getting deplatformed, demonetized, flat out censored. But then you would look up and notice somebody is growing and thriving and popping up out of nowhere. And you're like, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Oh, in fact, let me make a couple of points. So I think that it's, if you accept my argument, especially about Numbers 33, we see that it's a deception. That's what it was. It was a fear-mongering, scare tactic, don't go in the woods type of tall tale. And that is actually, by the way, what led to the people then being made to wander the wilderness for 4 decades before they entered the land. That's what it was. And now, in terms of what we would roughly call spiritual warfare, it's fascinating to me that we're still dealing with the after effects of that, with all these top pop researchers falling for that deception and popularizing it. I mean, it goes beyond logic. It goes beyond being theological. It has to be a spiritual warfare issue that we're still stuck in that when it comes to the popularization of this stuff. And then another aspect of it. So I wrote a book specifically about what I call the pop researchers. It's called Nephilim and Giants as per pop researchers. And I was forced to write a very disturbing chapter called Neo-Theo-Kampf. Okay, you might recognize the Kampf, the German word for struggle, right? Neo-Theo-Kampf, because some of the stuff these guys are teaching has the potential to be incredibly dangerous. Because they're claiming that they claim Nephilim are still around today. And when you say, well, where are they? I want to see these giants. They say, well, no, they've refined their genetic manipulation to the point that they look exactly like we do. Okay.
Where did they come up with this?
Where do they come up with this? Indeed. But now wrap your mind around that. What they're saying is Nephilim are among us. They have to be wiped out. And they look exactly like human beings. Can you see where that might lead?
Yes, man.
That is so disturbing. I'm going to look up a quote really quick to read you based on that concept. And that's why I had to write a whole chapter just on that point of how potentially dangerous these teachings are. When you're going to look at a human being, and you're going to claim that, no, they're actually not a human being. They're actually some sort of demonic hybrid, as they would put it, and they need to be wiped off the face of the earth. Wow.
Justification.
Talk about spiritual, I mean, just warfare.
Yeah.
Oh my, that is, you're black pill and the black pill right now, because this has my head like going out into so many different thoughts. I mean, I explained my Tartary one and how that's kind of just out there. I'm just like, dude, there are some episodes we do where I'm just like, I don't know. I don't even know.
I like that. You know what? I'm just gonna stop.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a quotation. This is from, I don't know who they are, someone who online, they go as by the term Watchman Mama. Okay, so apparently she writes, under the Arctic ice, the giants, what the Bible calls Nephilim, Genesis 6:4, are awakening. Yes, these things are real, and they have no love for us. They are bound with copper shackles and can only be slowed with copper-tipped ammunition, spearheads, your weapon at hand. You must destroy the head, according to Steve Quayle and other sources. What you can do to get ready? Have solid copper-tipped ammo. Shoot and destroy the giant's head completely. That's just out there being recommended. Like, if you think that somebody is one of these beings, then blow their brains out. It's shocking. I mean, it's absolutely stunning.
And it's stunning is how they get to that conclusion. How do they get to, like, what, copper? Like, why copper? Like, why did that all of a sudden pop in your head? And will bronze work?
I don't know precisely. I don't know precisely the quote unquote reasoning, but it is like you heard that the person referenced Steve Quayle, and he does say that it has to be copper. I don't recall why he claims that, but hey, Steve Quayle said it, then it must be true, apparently.
Man, that's some dangerous stuff right there.
Oh, it is. It's shocking.
I was waiting for you to find the quote to say this when you went on this part of the show to say the spiritual warfare part. I looked up at the timer on our thing, and I kid you guys not, it was 1 hour, 13 minutes, 33 seconds.
Of course it was.
Yeah. I just
right on the dot.
Oh my God. I'm just like, I don't know, man. This is going to take me a few days to recover from.
Yeah.
And this is so you're on 7 parts of this. These are what your books as it relates to Nephilim is on?
Well, it's the backstory for that is that I thought to myself, well, there's God, right? And then there's earth dwellers, but then there's this whole in-between realm, right? The paranormal realm. Uh-huh. And I wanted to know, what does the Bible say about all of those beings? So I researched all of it together. And that's a key, by the way. I'm glad I did it together because it helped me systematize everything.
Okay.
And not just have a theory over here that doesn't really comport with the theory over here, but I was forced to tie everything together. That's why I ended up coming up with that theory about what demons are. So then I wrote a book 1 with everything in it. And when I was done, I thought, that's a bit much. That was like drinking from a fire hose. So then I split that up into a book series. It's called What Does the Bible Say About? One's just about angels, one just about demons, one just like that, right?
Yes. This is on your website.
And since one of those was about Nephilim, I thought, okay, I'm done. That'll be the only Nephilim book I write. But then I thought, okay, but that was what the Bible says about them. Maybe I should write one about what extra biblical texts say about them. So I did that. Okay, I'm done. Oh, well, maybe I should write about what the scholars and academics say about it. Well, then I did that one. Well, if I'm going to do that, then I should write one about what the pop researchers say about it. So then I did that. So then, maybe I should write one about what pastors say about it. I did that. And then, maybe one about what the Bible commentaries say about them throughout the centuries. So I did that. And then I wrote one called Nephilim and Giants, Believe It or Not, which is more like all the crazy conspiracies, and now I'm working on one about what Bible dictionaries and encyclopedias say about it. So kind of just the most well-rounded set of books I can produce for people. Even if they don't care what I say, at least they'll be able to say, okay, I got all the resources right here.
Yeah, all right, and they can make their own judgment.
I like that. You have another book too that has chapters in it, I believe, from Isaac Weishaupt and Jay Dyer.
Yeah.
They've both been on our show, so that's cool to kind of...
Yeah, Transhuman Hollywood was the title of the reviewing movies with transhuman themes in it. And they contributed chapters. So yeah, that was a great project.
Cool. That's really cool. That's really, really cool. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say.
You know, the thing is, the takeaway lesson is actually a very, very simple one. Slow down, break things down into categories, make sure the terms are defined, set the table before we're jumping off into, all right, you got to blow their brains out. Whoa, hold on a second. Let's start out nice and easy, simple, slow things down, define your terms, because that's why I said that's the way I think. Let's break everything down to simple terms and see if we can rebuild that. We might not be able to if the foundations are faulty, but at least that's something everybody can do. And from now on, when you hear one of these guys, oh, giants, this and that, you're going to think, well, wait a minute. You haven't defined the term, so I don't even know what you're talking about yet. And how did you get there from here?
Yeah.
You didn't actually establish your foundation. See, that stuff is simple. Anybody can do that stuff.
The one that got me was when you used the example of the bed, right? Because if you use the bed that archaeologists have found to determine the size of somebody, for all the reasons we explained, you're probably not going to end up at a proper conclusion or finding, right? Yeah. And I look up, and I'm so guilty of this too, but in this conspiracy land, truth, or whatever you want to call it, world that we live in, we are so guilty of making connections like that, right? So I think it's very important to be critical of all those things. And I'm glad you used that example because it is so simple to think out and be like, yeah, wait, that wouldn't make sense. Because if I look at my queen size bed, I might be 7 feet tall, but I would also be like, 5 feet wide, which means I'm 400 pounds or something.
Right.
And I'm 5'10", 175. So I'm just like,
well, let's take that a step further. Okay. So people love to talk about the megalithic structures. And I'll grant you, some of them are absolutely mind-blowing, and I literally have no idea how they did it. Yeah. But just on a logical level, it's a non sequitur to think or conclude that large things must have been built for and by large people. It may be. Okay, again, I'm not denying that there were extra large people who were able to do these things because they were larger and stronger, but just on a logical level, you can't necessarily just jump to that because it makes it more exciting.
Yeah.
Or, as was the case in the 1800s with Western honky explorers, oh, these primitive tribesmen, there's no way they could have done this stuff.
Yeah, they're savages. They couldn't do this.
They're savages. And okay, we have to grant, though, that sometimes those tribes, the primitive tribe people, sometimes they did say, we don't know who built it. It was here when we came here. Yeah, I'm not denying that. But see, there are a lot of issues you need to dig into before jumping to the conclusions such as these. You do have to take those things into consideration. You do have to take into consideration that if you're an ancient or relatively modern monarch and you're funding my expedition and I come back and I tell you, we found like, I don't know, a new kind of monkey, I guess, that we haven't seen before. Dude, that's not going to do it. You're going to have to say, we saw giants, and if I was victorious, I defeated giants, or if I got beaten, I was defeated by giants. Can you fund me again? I mean, you just have to think kind of just all over the place to kind of figure out how do we even begin to discuss some of these things? Because that is something that bothers me is people who jump into the middle of it and they're off and running. And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. We haven't even taken the first step, and you're already doing a marathon.
You're so right, though, because one of our buddies always talks about, like, I don't know what of the stories, what's been written is true or not, right? But the one thing you can kind of point to as real is you can look at structures, like you said, right? Those are there. They exist. They were built. We don't know the story behind them, but that's okay. But the thing, and this is where I say I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it too. You see these structures with these big, huge entrances and doors that are like 10 feet or 20 feet tall. And I'm like, oh yeah, that means there's giants. Giants had to walk through those doors. Why would they build them that way? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it was just a sign of, maybe that's just what they did architecturally at the time, right? I don't know. But we make those connections because we like to, we just get caught up in this. I like to think differently because I'm a truther or whatever it is. And I'm like, yeah, there had to be giants. That makes total sense. They found, just like Ken said, they found the giant bones out in the desert. That's a giant. They got the big doors. There's a couple references in the Bible. Boom, it's done. And we just made it all up.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the doorways too, because I was about to bring that up.
Well, I tell you, in the building where I work, there's a doorway that is, I'm estimating 25 feet tall. And I never seen no giants walking around there. It's just that they have to move large equipment.
Exactly.
In and out of that
That's
room,
what I was just going to say. We build buildings with 20 feet tall doors so the semi can go through, right?
Or just because they look cool. They're impressive, you know? I mean, there's something about that it would give you the impression of, oh, wow, I'm so little here. This is so impressive. I'm in this holy place or whatever.
Yeah, that's another
might have been.
Yeah, another point to me.
Again, I'm not claiming as much as it may seem. I'm just saying, let's be commonsensical about this stuff first before we're off and running, right?
And again, you're not shooting it all down. You're not saying I don't believe it. You're just going, well, answer me this question. Answer me that one. That's all. I just want an explanation. Yeah, right. Yeah, twisting your mustache.
I'm also your shirt is pretty synchronistic to me because of the Vesica Piscis. That shape, the portal that it forms has some significant meaning to me. I'm going to leave that one out there as a teaser.
Oh, I'll leave something for you. So I made a shirt myself once, and it said in the beginning, it said, it's not just a fish, it's an eternity. So what I did is I made this shape first, and then I completed it, right? So it makes the infinity symbol, because that's traditionally, it used to be a secret Christian symbol. When they had to meet in secret, somebody would draw this on the ground, and the person in the know would draw the rest of it, and it made that infinity symbol. Yeah. But this one, what it shows is the tribes of Israel by name. Yeah.
Okay.
So this would be like a thing I would share with Micah. Because what's interesting, Micah told me, I hope this portion of it, I hope he doesn't mind me relating, because it was in a private chat, but he says, well, I mean, I was brought up Jewish too, but I pushed back. And I said, well, but that's in keeping with us Jews. I'll give you an example of what I mean. The Jewish radio talk show host Dennis Prager had a Muslim caller, and she said, well, why are you a Jew? Why aren't you a Muslim? And he said, well, because Islam means submission, but Israel means struggle. And we struggle with God. We struggle. And I was like, Micah, that makes perfect sense that you push back. That's what we do. We've been struggling with God and pushing back always. So that's one unique feature about us Jews being thought of as God's chosen people. There's a key distinction, though, because a lot of people have claimed to be special. Oh, we're the sons of the whatever, right? Angels, gods, aliens, evolution made us better. We're the best. We're superior. We're this and that. Us Jews, God told us, no, I'm picking you because you're the worst. You're the lowliest. You're the most stubborn. You're hard-headed, Right. You need help.
That's hilarious. You need help.
I'm going to need a few days. I'm going to have to walk this one off, man. We have another one this afternoon. I'm going to have to go outside, get some fresh air, and walk around the block. Just
take a little nap.
Yeah, I need to do something.
And by the way, as we started, if anybody wants to talk to me, critique me on anything I've said, I'll be more than glad to hear it, because if I'm wrong, I want to know it. And I want to correct it. And then if you're wrong, I want to be able to point it out. I'm absolutely open to that. I thrive on it.
And this won't be edited very much. He is, in fact, very nice. So this is real Ken. So it's no big deal.
Yeah. And that's why we wanted to do this. I appreciate your approach to everything, how you're so open and honest, and welcome everything that may come from this right back to you. So that way you can have a normal human discussion and talk these things out, because we want to look together. We want to move forward. We want to do that in the most truthful and accurate way possible. As hard as that is, that's what we're all here for. So we appreciate you joining us today. This has been so fun. Like I said, I got to walk around the block probably a couple times. Before we drop, though, where can people find you and your work, Ken?
Simply just go to truthfreethinker.com, all one word. And I recently had the site updated, so it's not exactly working as I would like it to, but it's still simple enough to just find everything there. I know people generally would go on for 10 minutes, Twitter this, Facebook that, Amazon the other. If you just go to truthfreethinker.com, you'll be able to find everything you need right there.
Awesome. And I'll drop that link in this episode description. You. So,
and you'll be able to find some of his, library of books that he's written. So I don't know what number he's at. I'm pretty sure he's probably forgotten how many, but they're all up there for you.
Yeah. It's my constant joke that I should know my own canon, but I haven't counted in a while. So maybe just over 50 by now.
Oh, wow.
He's written more books than I have papers. That's all I'm saying.
What kind of papers, Ken?
Fair enough.
All right, we'll leave it right there. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Chance. It's been a pleasure.